Welcome back to my haunted cave. This time I'm going to try and take you through the process of how I draft the Victorian patterns I tend to use. For fabric I decided to use this vintage bed sheet, which was in pretty good shape except for the moth-eaten parts. I'm always amazed at how neat the seams are and how nice the selvage edge of the fabric is. I'm also going to use this sun-bleached cotton curtain with lace insert. Anyway, back to the pattern drafting. You'll want some kind of paper with a 1x1 inch grid. I use old wrapping paper that doesn't get used and draw the grid on by hand. From point A, there are two straight lines where one drafts the pattern from, down and to the side. Along the pattern piece, there are numbers which indicate reference points and how far away they are on the grid. I count the squares on the grid and mark out the reference points. Once I'm done with that, I take a ruler and connect the dots, even if the line is supposed to have a curve to it. Once I have the rough pattern in front of me, I go in with one of those bendy rulers and draw in the curved lines. Then I go over it all with a marker and mark down anything of importance, like what is the top part or which part it is. To cut out the pattern piece I'm done with before starting on the next, so I don't accidentally draft over it. Putting down the first reference point, I start working on the front yoke pattern. Before I got myself one of them bendy rulers, I used to use anything I had on hand, like mugs and biscuit tins. With a bit of fiddling around, it works, but it's so much easier with a bendy ruler. Once I've got all of the pattern pieces, I make a mock-up or two and make some changes to the pattern. If the changes are dramatic, I make a new pattern piece, otherwise I just add to the original. When one has been working with patterns for a while, you start to get a feeling of it. Does it always make sense? No. But what I do know is that I usually have the length in the sleeves and the waist on bodices. And that's a start. Honestly, when I'm working on new patterns, I usually lay on the floor confused about what an 1/5 of an inch is and how to fit these shapes together on my body. Anyways, the big pattern piece of the chemise did not fit on the curtain, so I'll have to piece it together so the chemise is my desired length. I cut out the piece on the salvaged edge, so it will be a bit easier to piece together. Then I went ahead and folded the fabric in a way to avoid the moth-eaten parts and pinned the pattern down. I know it's not proper sewing practice to do this, since you might not get exact symmetrical pieces. But I don't really care. Since my body also isn't close to being symmetrical, since my bones keep jumping around. When cutting out different pieces for a garment, I like to keep the pattern pieces pinned on, so when I put them aside I still have all the important information on hand. After removing the channel for the curtain rod, I re-hemmed the upper edge by hand. It's time to piece them together. And at this moment I realized that I hadn't quite cut out this piece to size. Okay, now we piece them together. This I did by using a simple whip stitch, making sure I didn't go all the way to the front. And then I use a ladder stitch to make sure everything is nice and flat. Time for some machine sewing. I start off with the yoke pieces and then sleeves. For the sleeves, I leave enough space to hem the raw edge. When the first pass of seams are done, I press them flat so they might behave. I also prepare the sleeve cuff by folding them in half and pressing them. Once that's done, I pin and seam the two layers of the yoke together. After that, I turn the yoke right side out and top stitch the finished edge. I seam the sides of the sleeves together, again leaving space to hem the seam allowance. For this I use a whip stitch, but making sure to only catch a few threads before going back through the seam allowance. I also curve the seam slightly with my finger. When I stitch, this way it will sit a bit nicer. It's pretty tedious work, but the result is really nice. Then it's time to scrunch the sleeves till they match up with the sleeve cuff. You could also do some pleats if you want it to be more precise. Having the right sides facing each other, I sew the sleeve cuff to the sleeves. Then, flipping the right side out, I stitch the inside by hand. I sew the front and back of the chemise together, using a flat fell seam, skipping the inserted lace. This I do by hand, so the seam lays flatter. After that, it's finally time to join them together. First, I rough the front and back piece so it lines up with the yoke. Then, with the right sides facing each other, I sew them together. Once that's done, it's time to cram in the sleeves. It's best to take your time with this, so you only have to do it one time, hopefully. Then I pin everything into place, making sure there are no raw edges showing. At this point in the project, I'm so done with hand sewing. There are only a handful of moments I find hand sewing enjoyable. The first half meter in the project ended at 11 to 2 at night. Most of the yoke is done with a simple whip stitch. But when it's done, it looks so nice. This is probably the best hand sewing work I've done so far. When I was pretty much finished, I decided it needed some lace on the sleeves to balance out the lace on the bottom of the chemise. So I added that by hand, and with that the chemise is finished.